you for coming this evening. My name is Shelly Neiman, and I am the co-chair of CJC in the Mix. And we really appreciate you coming tonight. We have a great program for you. CJC in the Mix is proud to present Stories from a Wandering Jew, an evening with Broke Ass Stuart. This is a program of the San Diego Center for Jewish Culture at the Lawrence Family Jewish Community Center, Jacobs Family Campus. Just a reminder, we have two wonderful events coming up that we'd love to see you at. On May 17th, join us at Congregation Beth El as Rabbi Avi Libman shares with us the rabbinic secrets of kosher sex. I know you all are very interested in that. Then on June 12th, we will be hosting a screening of Holy Land Hardball, which is a wonderful documentary about professional baseball in Israel. And it will be held at Cinema Under the Stars over in Hillcrest. We'd love to see you there. Okay. So right now, at this time, instead of turning off your cell phones, please put them on vibrate. And we encourage you to check into this event on Facebook by searching Broke Ass Stuart, Stories from a Wandering Jew. Also a reminder, if you parked at the parking structure across the street, don't forget to get your parking validated at the front desk before you head out tonight. So Stuart first made a name for himself in San Francisco, where he became a cult hero in the pricey city for his guidebook, Broke Ass Stuart's Guide to Living Cheaply in San Francisco. He went on to write a similar guide for New York, contribute to Lonely Planet guidebooks, and now has his own travel documentary series on IFC, Young, Broke, and Beautiful. Also, he has a book, Young, Broke, and Beautiful. I think he's Young, Broke, and Beautiful. And if you would like to purchase his book, we have some in the back, and I'm sure he would be happy to sign them for you later today. Alex has them right over there. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker, Broke Ass Stuart. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad nobody's sitting right here because this is like the splash section, like in SeaWorld. We're very big talkers, so good. I've got a suitcase over here. This is not a prop. I actually barely made it here. I landed like an hour and a half ago. I was supposed to be take off at 12:15, and that didn't happen because SFO is terrible, and it's always like super foggy. But I made it. Hooray! I have a slideshow for you. Yeah. All right. I got to get rid of Pandora first, though. Hold on. I'm not very professional.
We still love you.
I don't even know how to use this thing. Hey, do you think it? No, it'll be cool. All right. Worst comes to worst, Curtis Mayfield will come on in the middle of what I'm doing. It'll be fine. Also, I have free stickers. Those are not stickers. Hold on. I have stickers for you guys when this is all over. The Young, Broken, Beautiful stickers that you'll probably see some point during the slideshow as well. So they're here. Let me know if you want them. So as you know, this is called Stories from a Wandering Jew. And I was thinking about how I was going to do this whole thing. And a funny story popped in my head. And there's a girl who I call my stripper ex-girlfriend. And she wasn't a stripper when we dated. We were 19, but she went on to be a stripper and then a dominatrix. And then now she's in med school. So she actually lived out that myth. But a number of years ago, I got this text from her. She said, I just bought a plant, and it's called the Wandering Jew. Guess who that reminds me of? So I thought that's a funny introduction to this, and I just want to talk about my stripper ex-girlfriend anyways. That's me as a Wandering Jew. I look really grumpy because I had food poisoning, I think. It was someplace in the buttfuck part of Argentina, way at the bottom of the world. So I've been called Broke Ass Stuart since 2004. I started doing these things called zines, which, hold on, where are you at? This guy over there, what was your name again?
Craig.
Craig bought my zine. He showed up today. He bought my zine and had me sign it. He bought it in 2004 probably in San Francisco. He showed up today with it. 2005. I'm not too good at numbers. And he had it. I was like, I haven't seen this in so long. It's so cool. What a zine is, it's like a little DIY pamphlet-y kind of thing that you can make at a Kinko's or any photocopy store, staple yourself. It was a blog before blogs existed. It's an analog blog. And so I started doing zines. It was Broke Ass Stuart's Guide to Living Cheaply in San Francisco. And I sold them from my backpack. They got real popular. And so after that, I got to write for Lonely Planet, as was said before. And then, had a popular website, a number of books, and then a TV show. And in that time, I've traveled a lot. Next slide. Israel. But I'm not there yet. Hold on. So yeah, I traveled a lot, and I've went all over the U.S. Probably been in 40 states-ish, 20 countries throughout the world. And everywhere I go, I've kind of thought of myself not only as an ambassador as an American, because when you travel and people are just like, oh, fucking Americans, you warmongering assholes. I've thought of myself as an ambassador for Americans, but also as a Jewish person, when I go to places where people have never met a Jew before, it's kind of like, oh, you're a Jew and you're cool, all right, and an American. And it's like, people aren't, people have a lot of biases, ignorantly, and I think of myself as, like I said, an ambassador, so people who haven't been used to this before, think of it what a Jew is to an actual face, and what an actual person is. A funny story of that is I'm also a button pusher. I remember being in Germany in the Love Parade in 2001, and drank all day and maybe took ecstasy all night. I'm not going to talk about that, but I remember being in the Tear Garden and met these these German kids, and I was pushing buttons, and I was like, Juden, Juden, kind of what you think about that? And just kind of not to get a rise, but also kind of really kind of start an interface and start a discussion about what that is and what that was. And it was really interesting because I felt almost like the way that Americans look at Native Americans here, how that's kind of how I felt like Jews were looked at least with non-Nazi sympathizing Germans. I was treated as a specialty, or some kind of unique little thing. And it was kind of fascinating, to have that different cross-cultural perspective. But the first time I left the country, I went to Israel, as it says right here, and it was pretty cool. I'm the guy with the bright shirt on. I wore a lot of tie-dye back then. Yeah, it's a Grateful Dead shirt. I'm wearing a hemp necklace. This is kind of really on the nose about being a Jewish traveler, going to Israel. So yeah, that's my first time leaving the country, and it was a lot of fun. There's a lot of Jews. It was Israel. I learned stuff. But as I mentioned before, I got to do some writing for Lonely Planet, and I got to go to Ireland for Lonely Planet, and it was an amazing experience. I travel all over the country of Ireland. There's out of 32 counties in the north and the south, I probably saw 25 of them, and it's a fascinating place because Ireland actually used to have a sizable Jewish population. There used to be a part of Dublin called Little Jerusalem, and the main character, that's Ireland, by the way. It's green, as you expect. It's pretty. It's very pretty. As you expect. Sorry, I always trip out on the photo. This is actually a ring fort that was built in like Stone Age era, and this was people lived in there, and they'd protect their land and stuff. It's been there forever. There's amazing shit all over the country. So in Dublin, there's Little Jerusalem, and the main character of James Joyce's Ulysses, his last name is Bloom, who's actually a Jewish character. So there used to be a sizable Jewish population. And when I was in Dublin, I befriended these girls in this hostel I was staying at. One was Israeli. Her name was Gabby. Another one was named Anna. She was from Spain. The reason I bring them up is because they actually factor in later in my travels. You travel long enough, you keep meeting the same people in different places. I ended up also in Belfast, which is a crazy fucking place. It's really beautiful and it's really interesting because the history there is fascinating. What this is a... you can see what this is. This is the Protestant part of Belfast, where you know those old paintings where when you walk and the eyes follow you, the gun barrel follows you. And I was in Belfast, and I knew that at one point they had a big Jewish population. So much so that even I think one of the presidents of Israel, not the prime ministers. I think in Israel the president is below the prime minister. He was, I can't think of his name, but he was actually from Belfast. And so I knew there was a sizable, at one point, Jewish population. And so I called the synagogue when I was in town. just to see if I could come visit it. And it was a little too far out of my way, so I didn't do it. But I talked to the guy for a little while. And I started, asking, where'd all the Jews go? Because at that point, there's maybe like 200 Jews left in like Northern Ireland. And so he and I started joking, but not joking, but joking, but not joking about why the Jews left. And he's like, yo, when the trouble started and the Protestants and the Catholics started killing each other, we realized it was only a matter of time until they realized there was Jews. So a lot of people started leaving during then. But what's another funny story is, when you go to these areas, you see these murals. Some of these murals are hit lists. There's names painted on these walls, then some of them are crossed out. They're hit lists. I mean, things have mellowed out some since, the 70s and the 80s, but there's still some tension. But there's a funny story. There's these black taxi tours, and the black taxi tours, they were kind of like, during the height of the Troubles, like kind of safe zones where if you needed to get to work, these black taxis would take you for free to work, and it was kind of like you would not get bombed or shot at because they knew people had to get to work. So now they do tours with them, and the tour driver told me a really funny story that happened in Belfast in, I think, a Protestant neighborhood, I think, or maybe a Catholic. Either way, so she's got this Korean couple in her car, and they're driving around, and they stop to look at the murals, and they're walking around, and he sees this couple. They go to a door and knock on it, and this guy's like, what the fuck are they doing? So they knock on this door, and this woman answers the door, talks to them for a couple minutes, and invites them in the house. And she's like, what just happened? And this is during Christmas time. So about a half hour later, they walk out of the house with presents. And he's like, so finally, they come back to the car, and he says, what just happened there? And apparently, somebody whose house it was had shalom on their, had a sign that said shalom, because, most people want peace, especially in zones like this. But they thought it said saloon. And so they thought they could get a drink. So the woman invited them in, and gave them a drink, and then gave them Christmas presents. That's me, looking grumpy again for some reason. That's the Peace Wall in Belfast. And it's a wall that divides the Protestants from the Catholics, basically, which kind of sounds familiar to anybody who's paying attention to things that go on in the Middle East. And, I don't know how, people still throw Molotov cocktails over there and all that. But what I found fascinating about Belfast and about the graffiti that you see is that the Protestants all identify with Israel, and the Catholics identify with the Palestinians. And which for me, like, really changed the narrative of oppression for me, the way I thought about oppression, in the sense that, and this might be taboo here, but really the way, like, growing up Jewish, and also growing up as Americans, we're always running for the underdog. We always go for the underdog. It's part of, like, our culture. And so, like, growing up here and growing up Jewish, I was like, Israel is right. We should, and as I got older, I support Israel as a place that needs to exist, but I don't always support all their decisions and things that they do. And this kind of changed the way I thought about it all. I was like, well, the people that I always rooted for, the Catholics, because they were the underdogs, and how they're rooting for the Palestinians, I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. Who's in charge and who has the power. And I'm not going to go on a whole spiel about this, but it's just a new way of looking at the world, especially when I was like, 24 years old and newly experiencing those ideas. Next was Argentina. And there were hella Jews in Argentina. I went to South America because my grandmother passed away, and she had a little bit of money, and I was like, I could either blow this in the bars in San Francisco, or I could blow this in the bars in Argentina. So I decided to go to Argentina. When I went to Peru on that trip, and Costa Rica, and Uruguay. And what was funny is I ran into all these Israeli travelers, because all these kids would get out of the army. The first thing they'd do is, grow their hair out, eat some mushrooms, and buy a plane ticket to get the fuck out of Israel. And so I met all over South America. I met Israeli travelers. It was kind of cool. That's Buenos Aires, or at least a building in Buenos Aires. It's a beautiful city. They brought, a lot of people there are of Italian and Spanish descent, And during their peak, their boom, was in the late 1800s. They brought all the best architects from Paris into Buenos Aires to make it look like the Paris of South America. So that's kind of an example of it. I ended up moving into this hostel at one point called the Giramundo Hostel, and I was, as I was checking in, the guy behind the counter, he looks at my passport and he goes, "Stuart Schuffman? Are you Jewish?"
No.
And I'm like, "Yes." He goes, "My last name's Goldberg." Apparently, Buenos Aires is like the 6th biggest Jewish population in the world. It's like, somewhere like between Mexico City and Paris or something like that. It's huge. And so he's like, "Yeah, dude, I'm going on this booze cruise tonight. Why don't you come? There'll be a bunch of other Jews." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Sounds awesome." Because, I'm fascinated as you can tell, I'm fascinated by Judaism and other cultures, and seeing what's the same and what's different. Because there's certain similarities, of course. There's a million different differences. Like, what do they eat on Passover? Is it different than what we eat on Passover and stuff like that? So I ended up hanging out with all these Jews on a booze cruise. Who could say no to that, right? Don't answer that question. But here's funny. What's a funny story is my buddy Goldberg, Emmanuel Goldberg, his friend was behind the counter. She was not Jewish, and she ended up hooking us up with some free sandwiches, and they have to be ham and cheese sandwiches. And I was thinking, that is the oldest Jewish joke in the world: free ham and cheese sandwiches. Let's see here. I don't know which slide is next, but there's a funny one, and I'm not sure if I'm going to blow it yet, so we'll see what happens. So then I was down in Ushuaia, which is the very, very bottom of the world. It's the last city before you get to Antarctica. And I ended up meeting, as I mentioned, a bunch of Jewish travelers. They were all Israeli. And it was me and a bunch, maybe like 7 to 10 Israeli kids, and it would have to be Hanukkah. So then we gathered everybody else in the hostel, Jews, non-Jews, everybody, and we lit the candles and we said the prayers. And it was this kind of amazing feeling being in literally the bottom of the world, the last stop before Antarctica, and finding Jews to celebrate Hanukkah with and light the candles with. And it was really cool. This is what it looked like down there. This is El Calafate, just outside of Ushuaia by an hour or two. And that's a giant glacier. It's blue. Kind of looks like Superman's house. That's my butt. So I went to, down there they call it El Culo del Mundo, which is the ass of the world. So I was down in the ass of the world, and I figured I'd take a photo of my ass in the ass of the world. This is us, this was lighting the candles down in this hostel. He's Jewish, she's Jewish. He's Jewish over there, but instead of having a yarmulke on, he put a napkin on his head. Kept it covered. But, and then, like I said, I got these stickers. That's everybody from the hostel rocking the stickers. I'm pretty sure that blonde one's not Jewish. But remember I mentioned that I met this Spanish girl with an Israeli girl when I was in Dublin, right? This is the Spanish girl. I ended up hanging out with her in South America, and we traveled all the way down to Ushuaia together from Buenos Aires. And the reason I bring that up is because the next place I went, in these travels and being Jewish, was Spain. So I ended up going to Spain for her wedding a few years ago. So not only did we meet in Dublin, and then we traveled together in South America, and then when I was living in Brooklyn, she stayed with me in Brooklyn and San Francisco, and then she got married, so I went out to visit her in Spain. And so did the Israeli girl, Gabby, came out there too. This is Sevilla. It's pretty. There's a lot more photos of it, but it's a short slideshow. What was interesting about Sevilla was that this was after the wedding, after I'd been out there and been in this place where Jews probably hadn't been there since the Crusades, or at least since the Inquisition, and it was so it was really way outside of Barcelona. So then that was for the wedding. And afterwards, I traveled all the way down to Sevilla, which is a beautiful town, beautiful. The old city is like a maze, and I met these Kiwi guys in the hostel I was staying at, and we ended up getting this conversation once again about being an American and being a Jew, and once again I found myself in the role of being an ambassador, and I'm not a dumb cat, so I can go toe to toe with them about pretty much anything. And so at first it was pretty antagonistic. It was like, you know, the Jews in America are fighting Israel, and Israel is dropping bombs, yada yada yada, and you know, and I'm not a hardcore anything, but you know, and like I said before, I think that I agree that Israel needs to exist, but I don't agree with a lot of its policies, and especially what happens in the settlements in the West Bank and things like that. But as a smart person, as a traveler, as someone who can engage with people, it was interesting talking with them for 2-3 hours over drinks, and finally at the end, them realizing that like they're from a rock, you know, in the middle of the ocean with limited views and not really knowing Jewish people, and seeing how I can influence the way they see the world after that, and like my viewpoints and about what it all is. It's not very exact, is it? I've had a little bit of wine. Fuck it. But no, really, it is interesting to be out there and come across people who've never come across Jews before, and then them putting a name to a face, and them seeing like that you're a real person with real views and that should be valued as well, and then you know still being friends with them after that. As long as you're nice people and they're nice people, you can get along. That's also Subia. It's pretty still. That's not kosher. Definitely not kosher. That's me on Jew Street. Calle de Judíos. It's in Cordoba. Cordoba used to have a humongous Jewish population in the Middle Ages, during like the golden age of you know Judaism in the Iberian Peninsula. That was like the seat of it all, and so they still have the Street of the Jews. And what was cool is there was this synagogue that was unearthed in somebody's family's house from that era, and I'm really shitty at taking photos when I need to be taking photos, as opposed to being like this guy on Jew Street. So I should have taken photos of like this really cool synagogue. That was from like you know the 1400s or 1500s, and it's one room, but there's still some like Hebrew script on the walls, and you know a couple like ancient menorahs that are still there, which is kind of cool. And it was just fascinating to like I said, as you see, I try to find Judaism wherever I go, and part of what I do, part of what this all is a lust for knowledge. It's a lust for finding myself and my history and my culture in other places. And my dream, ultimately, if I could do anything, I'd make like a documentary TV show about exploring Judaism and other cultures. Like go to Ethiopia and meet Jews there and see what they're doing. Go to you know, fucking New York City. They got plenty of Jews there. You know, go to China and meet ethnically Chinese Jews because they're out there. You know, I mean, and so this is the last slide. So I'm just kind of rambling at this point, but that's what you know. I take away from all my travels. Is like no matter where I go, I'm Jewish, and I meet my own history everywhere I go too, and my own ethnicity and my own culture. And I just got to look a little harder for it in some places than others, but it's out there, even on Jew Street. So that's it. Any questions? Questions? Not clapping.
Where are your next travels?
Going back to San Francisco soon. I don't know. This year, I don't know if I'm leaving the country at all. Hopefully. I'm trying to book some travels through some press trips like Mexico and shit like that. But nothing's on the books right now. Anything else? Doesn't have to be. Yes?
Do you experience any anti-Semitism in any of the countries you've been in?
When I do, it's not always explicit. Maybe it's more tacit, like in the sense where they don't even always know they're being anti-Semitic. They're like, oh. Well, you know, it's a funny thing is like my ex-girlfriend, she's from way upstate New York, like between Rochester and Buffalo. And when I'd go up and visit her family, I'd be the only Jew for fucking miles, you know. And so people there, you know, they use derogatory terms for every ethnicity because it's all white people up there. It's all like Italian white people. You know, from 5 generations ago, but like, so they don't have black people, they don't have Jewish people. They maybe have one Chinese family that may have a restaurant or something, and that's it. And so they use these terms like they just throw them around, and they don't even realize they're being racist. And so in that sense, yes. But I mean, I've never really got my ass kicked for being Jewish. Knock on wood. Don't try it, fuckers. I've never come out, real explicit anti-Semitism. No. I mean, yeah, in elementary school I was called a Jew bagel once, I think. Yeah, I called him a Christmas tree and told him to fuck off. Any other questions? It doesn't have to. It can be about anything. I mean, we can sit here and talk Dear Abby if you'd like. I'm good off the cuff. Yeah.
You were in Argentina. Did the subject of Adolf Eichmann ever come up?
It's a good question. What's a funny thing about that is there's this joke I heard during the World Cup where what was it? That Jews didn't know who to root for when Argentina was playing soccer against Germany. It was like,
oh God.
No, that didn't. I mean, that didn't really come up. I mean, sure, there was talk about because a lot of the Jews ended up in Argentina not long before the Germans did. I mean, the Jews started going there, during the late 1800s, early 1900s. Same time they started coming to like New York and San Francisco and places like that. But it wasn't a big topic of conversation. But I was cognizant of it, and I thought about it because there's a sizable German population there. Actually, what's even more fascinating than that? There's a huge Welsh population in Argentina. I had high tea in Patagonia, and everybody there had bright red hair and blue eyes that spoke with an Argentine Spanish accent. It was the most bizarre, surreal thing. But yeah, so it's a place with immigrant communities, and there's a huge German population, but that didn't really come up that often. Just shit that I kept in the back of my mind. I wasn't hunting for them or anything. Anybody else? Yes?
What about your TV show? Where is that taking you?
That was just here in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately it did not get picked back up, which is cool. I got other shit going on. I've got other things in the works. Okay. Bastards.
What other projects are you working on?
Some I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to curse myself. But there's like a little web series I'm trying to work on, and then I'm talking to other production companies about doing another show on TV. But traveling takes you all these places, and I met the most fascinating person. I meet all kinds of interesting people. The most fascinating man I've ever met in my life was a guy named Jerry DeMongo in Detroit. And he's an old school hustler, black dude from the streets of Detroit, old school hustler, who used to sell heroin in a major way. He was involved with the guy who, if you ever saw American Gangster, the guy that's based off of, he was involved with him, and he helped him move heroin through Detroit in the Midwest. He's now not involved in any of that anymore. But he was fascinating. He's like, man, you ever seen what a machine gun does to a man? I'm like, nope. He goes, it's just all scar tissue. But he's also, what's fascinating, he's been a Jew for 20 years now. He converted to Judaism, and he's on the board of his synagogue.
Why?
Why? I don't know why people convert. They just do. But it was fascinating, and he was one of those people who's really street smart and really intellectually smart as well. Fascinating dude. And well, I can talk about this dude forever, but he had this bar where it's only open one night a week. It's only open Fridays. He tells stories how back in the day when it was all hustlers and gangsters in there, the waiters in the restaurant, in the bar, would have guns in their waistband, just because it was that kind of place. Detroit's a strange place. But yeah, the dude was fascinating. Yes?
What city would you choose for your next guide to live in cheaply?
If somebody was paying me to go out and choose whatever state I wanted to, I'd probably try to do international just so I could milk it for all I could. But I don't know. Realistically, in terms of branding and shit like that, I'd choose Los Angeles, I think, or Boston or Seattle, some major city in the U.S. Although it'd be cool to do a series just doing major cities around the world that are really expensive, like doing Copenhagen, London, Oslo, Tokyo. That'd be pretty rad because people go there and they're like, I don't have any money, and it's really expensive. How can I do this? I'm thinking Copenhagen, a beer at a bar is like $12 American, and that's not a fancy bar. It's just any bar.
When you talk about the process, obviously writing the San Francisco book, you're already part of the San Francisco culture. But going to New York and starting, as a immigrant yourself to New York, not knowing, how did you go about finding cheap ways to get around?
That's a good question. I'm most proud of my 3 books. Most proud of my New York book because it was I built an entire guidebook from scratch Whereas like the San Francisco one was built on a couple zines, and then so it was like 2/3 done before I even started the actual book. With New York, I literally started from nothing, and I learned the city by walking its streets, by doing research. And I had this whole regiment of I'd research all day long, and then I would go work in a restaurant 4 nights a week, and then I'd get off work at the restaurant, and then go do bar research and nightlife research. And so I'd start off by doing research by doing stuff on the web, and mapping out like ideas, neighborhood by neighborhood, like things that I found that seemed cool. And then once I found those, I'd go see if they're actually cool or not, and actually see if they like are up to snuff. And then also like walking around and seeing what other stuff I found. And did it systematically, starting in Lower Manhattan, and moved my way up, all the way up to like Harlem, past Harlem, and then Brooklyn, a little bit of Brooklyn. Well, 6-7 neighborhoods in Brooklyn, and a couple of things in Queens. So yeah, it was awesome. I crack myself up when I read myself.
So is that how you approach every new city you go to, or what kind of advice do you have when you go to a new city?
My biggest advice, I think, is just to be wide open. Like just like say yes to most things that seem safe. Like, I mean, don't, like, if it's a panel band that pulls up and says, "Get in here," don't say yes to that. but be open-minded, I mean, and like, I meet people everywhere I go. And like, for example, I was in Madrid recently, and I was hanging out in met these kids late night in the hostel I was staying in, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're partying in this squat tomorrow. You should come through." And it's like the oldest squat in Madrid, and they have much more squatters' rights in Europe than here. And so I ended up at this squat where they have tango lessons twice a week. They have Spanish lessons for immigrants. They have a free store that mostly has clothing for like immigrant children who can't, their parents can't afford clothes. And they end up in cool places like that just by saying yes and being like, "Yeah, let's do this. It's different." And then and then through there I meet people, and then like met people there, and then stayed out till 5 a.m. dancing into Curtis Mayfield, in some random bar. It's just about being open-minded and whatever. But if I'm doing a book, if I'm doing research, yeah, it's definitely more systematic than saying yes. But that's always my advice: just be open-minded and do what feels good and safe. I'm here all night.
What's the spiel on your book that you have here?
This book's pretty rad. It's because my previous books were like, it's a guide to San Francisco. The other one's a guide to New York. This new book came out maybe 6-8 months ago, and it's a general guidebook to how to survive anywhere as a broke ass. And so instead of being like, "Go here, do this," it's like, these are ideas of how you can survive. There's an eating section, a drinking section, a traveling section. There is, for example, there's like, don't take a cruise, take a cargo ship. You can travel by cargo ship places, and it's cheaper than a cruise, and you can still get across. Granted, there might even be a swimming pool. It's not going to be like, blue cocktails by the pool though. But it's about being creative in the way that you do things, and it's a lot of DIY stuff, and it's different. Like my look on everything is like, it's not really about being broke or being rich and stuff. It's about like appreciating the things that you don't really need money to have a great life, and you don't, and so because of that, it's like what you own shouldn't own you, and so that's kind of the thesis behind everything I do, is that like your life can be amazing with money, with a fuckload of money or without. It's all about the choices you make and what you want to do with it, your life and with your time, and so that's kind of like the whole story behind that, and it's a lot of fun, and a lot of shit talking too. I'm good at that. All right. Toby.
Do you have a most bizarre story that you can't appropriately talk about at JCC?
I've definitely blown appropriate out of the water at this point. I forget my mom's here though, so I shouldn't tell all the stories.
Leave the room.
Bizarre story. There's so many of them. Trying to think of a. You're gonna hear a good story. It's not really a travel story. This is my favorite story I've heard recently. I was out to dinner with a friend of mine, and she was telling me that that her boyfriend had dropped her off. She lives with a boyfriend now, but she had been a year before, so that she'd been dropped off by her boyfriend in the morning, and she was upstairs to her house, and she was in her apartment, and she was in her room, and there's some dude sleeping in her bed, and she's like, "Oh well, maybe my roommates had some friends over, and somebody needed to crash." She goes to her roommate's room, and she goes, "Yo, do you know the guy sleeping in my bed?" And she goes, "Nope." And she goes to the next roommate, she goes, Rich knocks on her door and is like, yo, do you know the guy sitting in my bed? And she goes, no. And so she calls the cops, and then she calls her boyfriend to come back too. And so the cops show up, and they all surround the bed with their guns drawn. And this dude wakes up, just like, what the fuck? Apparently, it was the guy's 30th birthday the night before, and he lived down the street and had the same layout as his place. He thought it was his room. So he woke up and he thought it was his room to 9 cops with guns on him. But what's funny is I want to hear the story from his side. It's a good story. Yeah. If that's that, unless somebody got something else to say. Do any of you guys have some really great travel stories about being Jewish out there, or not being Jewish, or just something you want to talk about? We can get up here. Got a microphone. No? All right, you missed your chance. There's still some nacho cheese. There's still some wonderful books you can buy. There's some beer and wine, and I got free stickers if you want some.
What's the least safe situation you got yourself in?
I've been really lucky, knock on wood. I've never really gotten my ass kicked. I've never gotten robbed by gun or knife point. I've definitely, I once had a sandwich stolen from a hostel refrigerator. When I was living in New York, this pissed me off. I'd been all over the world at that point. I was living in New York and I lost a bag. I don't know if it got pinched or I just forgot it on the subway. But I've been really lucky. Part of it's street smarts, part of it's being aware of my surroundings, and part of it is fucking luck. Because I've definitely had friends that, dodgy situations. I was in Montreal one time, I remember, and they were like doing work on this building, and so they built this like, the awning where people stand, and then it was like, so basically like I was like hidden from the street, and so I was walking, I was on the phone, I was traveling with my girlfriend at the time, and she was back where we were staying, and I was on the phone talking to her, and I'm walking, and there's an inlet from that little protected area where like a fire hydrant was, and so they opened it up. And so people were just standing back there, and I was like walking, and they stepped out, and I was like, I'm about to get mugged, bye. And I thought for sure that was it. And they was like, well, what time is it? I'm like, God, you're fucking Canadians, you're so nice. But they really just wanted to know what time it was. It was so weird. I thought for sure that was it. But yeah, like I said, I've been really lucky. Yeah, I'm luckily, that's it. Nothing too serious. Now I'm gonna walk outside and get hit by a car. Yes.
When you're traveling, you hitchhike?
I hitchhiked throughout parts of Costa Rica, West Ireland. I was traveling in Ireland, and there was no bus service where I was going. I was doing research for Lonely Planet, and didn't rent a car at that point. So yeah, I hitchhiked through West Ireland for about a week or two. Some places it's safer than others, and I try to like do some research on that beforehand. Like, I feel like cheated that like it's not that safe to hitchhike in the U.S. anymore. Like when I lived in Santa Cruz, I used to hitchhike to school every day, but it was different. It was like every going that direction was students, and it was kind of like an insular thing. I do wish that we could hitchhike more in the U.S. I know some people do, but I haven't had the balls to do that as much. But yeah, I've hitchhiked some places. I think I even hitchhiked in Israel when I was like 16, which probably I do stupid shit. You know?
You have shoes on?
I might have had shoes on. I came back from Israel for some reason. You should tell us. You want the microphone, Mom? Could you imagine she just gets up here and roasts me? You should have seen this motherfucker when he was 16. No, Janice. Yes.
Would you always travel cheaply even if you didn't have to?
Yes and no. Yes and no. My ideal situation is a private room in a hostel. Where
compared to a hotel, you would still
absolutely, because like this thing runs me. This mouth is in charge. I'm not in charge, and so like I get off on meeting new people and like meeting people from around the world. And like when you're in a hotel, unless you like sit in the hotel bar all day, or like unless you're really avid about getting at people in the lobby, you're not going to meet people, you know. So having a private room in a hostel is kind of perfect, so you can like have your space and like walk around naked a little bit if you want to, but still like hang out and meet cool people from around the world. So I mean, it'd be not, yeah. Maybe if I had more money, I would have nicer meals sometimes, but I'd still do most of the same stuff. I get these. Yeah, that's the funny thing. There's always a. I chose the name Broke Ass Stuart when I was like 24. I'm like 31 now, and it's and it's funny. I've got a friend who does this really great webcomic. She's gotten kind of famous for it, called Fart Party. And so we've had a conversation about the names you've chosen. It makes sense at the time. But no, I mean, the brand Broke Ass Stuart's kind of funny because it's catchy and people identify with it. But as someone who's getting older, and I'm still actually really don't have much money at all, but in every interview I've ever done, people have been like, "Whoa, what happens if you start making money?" I'm like, first of all, I would love to have that problem. Secondly, as I was saying before, it's so much more about world outlook and how you live your life and what you value to me than what your things are valued at. And so I'd still go to the same shitty bars with the same shitty people if I made $1 million. I would I'd go to nicer restaurants, like you said, more often because I'm a glutton. But I would still live my life the same way. I still probably wouldn't buy a car because I live in San Francisco. I still wouldn't do these superfluous things that aren't necessary. But give me money.
How many languages do you speak?
1.5. My English is okay. English, and I speak Spanish pretty well. I grew up on the border. I grew up here and also in El Paso, so I've always spoken Spanish. It's not perfect by any means, but if I'm in a Spanish-speaking country for 2 or 3 weeks, I'm talking shit with cab drivers by the time I leave. Yeah, I actually totally. One thing I love about traveling is learning, knowing another language, is learning the slang in all those different countries, and how to say dirty words in different countries is amazing. Because it changes, the same language, but changes. Just England, Ireland, and here in South Africa, we all have the same different dirty words for the same things, the same parts.
Like what, Stuart? It's a family.
Which language?
In English.
Hmm?
In English.
You're right. and most people here understand Spanish too, so I'll stop. All right, I think the comedy routine's done. Next up, we have a circus act, I think. Yeah, cool. Anything else?